Right now, live on the line as promised. Friend of the program, the outstanding reporter from Yahoo Sports, our good friend, the great Pete Thamel, was nice enough to give us a few minutes live on the line. Pete, how are you, my friend? What's cooking?
Adam, it is March. Never been better, man. Just it's a different year. I think this is the first year since 1999 that I did not go cover a first round NCAA tournament site.
Wow. Holy cow. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that means I've spent 3 months of my life in total at first round NCAA tournament sites only. It's a little sad if you think about it, but it was weird not being in those locker rooms and not being in the gyms. And I'm headed to Indy late this week for the rest of the tournament. But it was strange yet wonderful at the same time to watch it all unfold. And it is really a great television event. You know, I mean, I hadn't had that sort of experience for multiple days in a row watching and consuming the tournament in the way that most people do. And you can see why it is just like addictive and overwhelming and wonderful. And in a way, I really appreciated experiencing it that way.
You know, that just really resonated. You've never watched the tournament on television. So you now have this great appreciation, I would think, in a lot of ways. You know, obviously you cover the sport, you love the sport, you live for it. I mean, it is such a great TV sport in terms of the madness and capturing the drama. What was your favorite moment and you're writing obviously all weekend, but what was was there one shining moment for Pete Thamel on the couch this weekend? What was it?
I think like the one that struck me, and it's somewhat obscure, but there was a lot going on. I don't remember what was going on, but like you're on a Zoom, you got two games on, you're watching, and I looked up and it was like Cleveland State and Houston are at halftime, and it's like I didn't even know that game started. It's just like whoa, it's all just like flying at you at such a rapid rate. I mean, I loved Jason Preston story.
Yeah.
When Ohio won the MAC tournament, Beth Bowles texted me and said I congratulated him, and he said this kid's life is a movie. And you know what? It really is a movie. That was awesome. Just to kind of see that come to life was a lot of fun. I mean, I've been at I think at least one 15-2 upset in person, maybe two, but I really sitting and watching Ohio State Oral Roberts kind of go down wire to wire was a lot of fun. I was 3/4 of the way through a column on Syracuse's 2-3 zone. I've written that one before.
Yes, you have. Yes.
Looked up and there's 6 minutes left. Oral Roberts is about to beat Florida, so that column never got finished. I'm going to write it this week about the zone's March prowess. It was just this sort of machine gun flurry of so many different things happening at the same time. So I miss it. I can't wait to go back. I'm excited to cover it this week, but it was an interesting experience.
Well, and I'm curious, with Oral Roberts and Ohio State, I said this on the air on Monday. That was one of those where you're never going to forget it. You know, and I know Oral Roberts then won another game. I don't care about that. I'm talking about, look, the 116, everyone knows what happened with UVA. That's going to go down in history. Then you have some 215s that I think that resonate more than others. Not that I was taking the cheese in Ohio State as a Final Four team, but that's a great team with great players coming out of, at the time, which we'll get into in a second, the best conference in college basketball. Did that one hit you the same way it hit me? Like, what the heck just happened? That to me, I mean, I don't want to be subject to hyperbole, but that was like a top 5, top 6 all-timer in the NCAA tournament.
I mean, it had to be up there. The other thing was like Roberts wasn't that good. They scored in the Summit League. Here's the other weird thing about Oral Roberts. I give all the credit in the world. I got a big feature on Paul Mills, their coach, coming out this week. I talked to him for an hour yesterday, and he's got a wonderful guy with a remarkable story. They didn't play that well. Like, there's no really other way to say it. Like, they were 10 of 30 from 3 from Florida. It wasn't like they they went out and lit the world on fire. It reminded me a little bit of the Syracuse Vermont upset, I think in '06 in Worcester in a 13-4 game. Like, Vermont played terrible. Syracuse played worse. Like, Vermont shot some obnoxiously bad percentage from the field. TJ Sorrentine hit that shot from the parking lot. I think he was like 3 of 18 in that game. So it's funny what like all the confluence of things that have to happen. And look, like Glenn Washington kind of shot Ohio State out of the game. Like, there's no other way to say it. Like, a lot of things have to happen in a lot of different ways for an upset like that to happen. And look, I think Oral Roberts beats them Ohio State beats them 8 out of 10 times that they play. But there's a certain pucker power. I mean, Oral Roberts sagged the defense and said, all right, if you're going to beat us, shoot over the top, and pucker power wins. So, watching that was obviously dynamic. How about the Abilene Christian coach? Did you see his?
Oh,
Joe
my
Golding's,
goodness. Yeah, that was
that guy. That guy, awesome. Like, he looks exactly like Will Muschamp, and he sums up like all the issues in America in an unpolitical but like very wise, folksy way in a really small window of it's just like a really pithy way in his press conference, and kind of summed up how we were all feeling. And who knew the Abilene Christian coach was going to sort of like strike to the chord of the week. So
it was incredible. Yeah. I felt the same way as you did watching that. I try when it comes to the tournament, I try hard to make sure I don't judge a conference, because I do think this is just my opinion. It's matchup based, right? If Rutgers wins, Rutgers loses. I'm not going to judge the Big Ten by it. Pete, there's a bad showing by the Big Ten. There's no other way to phrase it. I was stunned. What was your reaction?
I was pretty surprised. Now, they lost 3 games in overtime, right? So it was you can't sit there and say this was just this like epic flop. There's bounces and there's other things, and there is a variance to how this one and done thing plays out. I just wonder if, because these teams played each other and really didn't play anyone else, and I don't actually think the Big Ten played anyone else. I could be wrong about that, but and it's really instructive for how to view college basketball in the future now, when we're going to have these 20 games league schedules, and there's going to be less and less relevant interconference matchups, especially, Adam, less and less like Atlantic 10 versus Big Ten. Because when your conference schedule is going to be this bloated with league games, you're going to be less likely to challenge yourself. You're just gonna fill up on directionals and quad 3s and quad 4s because you're going to have enough oomph in your own conference. But I do think we got seduced some by the Big Ten because we watched them play each other, right?
Right.
We didn't really have any other strong empirical evidence to judge them off of, and so I think that's maybe one of the reasons why we got we got a little bit infatuated with them. And look, I thought Michigan would be vulnerable, right? I'm always one of my like picking predictors that usually, quite frankly, works out pretty well is pick against the injuries, man. Like when they happen, when a team is all of a sudden like hobbled. You look at like Virginia, for example. They didn't have an injury necessarily, but they were going to be going into that game with a handicap because they're not practicing and because of the uncertainty shrouding them. It just makes a lot of sense to do that. So I thought with the Livers injury that Michigan would be vulnerable, and I give Juwan Howard a lot of credit. Like they're an excellent team, and they did what good teams do. They figured it out as they went along the other night against LSU. But yeah, overall, I mean, it was fun to watch the Big Ten this year, right? Like, I mean, it was that league and the Big 12 were I thought the two most compelling.
Totally agree with you.
To follow in the sport, and I do think now when we deconstruct this season that some of what we judged them off of was because we didn't have anything else to judge them off of.
I think it's an excellent point, and I would echo that in terms of a ranking of the top 2 conferences, whether it's skill or whether it's the fun quotient. I would echo that completely. I did have USC and Oregon both advancing to the Sweet 16 just on matchups and, watching them down the stretch. The Pac-12, were they underrated? Were they undervalued? Are we surprised here by the 4 teams from the conference in the Sweet 16?
Well, I thought Oregon was the best value in the whole tournament in terms of a seeding. And it was especially because if you took into account the Will Richardson injury and him coming back and how well they played with him healthy, and the way they finished the season. Plus, Dana Altman is an NCAA tournament ninja coach. Like there's just no other way to say it. Like the way they switch defenses, they play deliberate on offense. Between the Pac-12 tournament and NCAA tournament, his numbers are just outlandish in how successful he is as a postseason coach. And then if you just look at the pure matchup, if you watched Iowa this year, they were a little bit slow-footed and athletic. And if you watched Oregon, they could move. I mean, they put on a clinic the other day. They have 25 or 26 assists in that game. I mean, they actually ran circles around Iowa. So I really thought that matchup-wise, Oregon was a really good value to go, and I have them going to the Elite Eight. And look, they'll be the first team, I think, that really challenges Gonzaga.
I agree with everything you just said, and I picked Oregon, Gonzaga in my Elite Eight, and I'm staying with it. Pete, I know it's the whole, team or the field. You should always, in theory, go with the field, but, and I thought it was Kentucky a few years ago that would have that unblemished season. And I'm openly rooting for Gonzaga. I love Mark Few. I love this team. Had Adam Morrison on the show last week. He thinks this is the best. I mean, it was such a great spot. Oh, I mean, that was like my sweet spot for college hoops. I mean, having him on the show was awesome. Do you think Gonzaga is the clear-cut favorite to cut down the nets in Indy?
Yes, I do. I picked them as boring and uninspired as that is. I really think they have everything. I mean, you watch that Oklahoma game that our friend Carter Blackburn called on CBS this weekend, or I guess Monday, right? It's not a weekend, so I guess 2 days ago. They didn't really play that well. They kind of sleptwalked their way through a blowout win. I mean, they played all right, but like it just sort of spoke to how just the talent level and how free flowing they play and how unselfish they are. Like, there's just so much to like, and they have this great mix of like the sturdy veterans we've always seen Gonzaga have, and the player development, which I think is probably one of the most underrated things for Mark Few and Tommy Lloyd out there. But then they also have Suggs, who's a just front line. Like, he could end up as the number one pick in the draft. I'm not saying he will be, but like I think he will be under consideration. I don't think Cade Cunningham is like a no-brainer, absolute number one pick in the draft. He probably is, and he's probably earned it. But Suggs in these next couple of weeks should maybe change some people's minds, because I really think he's that special, Adam.
I love Gonzaga. I love Suggs. Love Mark Few. I think they're going to win. I've been saying that all season, preseason, all tournament, and I think it's absolutely going to happen. Pete, Loyola Chicago, it's such an interesting story. They, to me, are not a Cinderella team at this stage. I mean, I couldn't believe they were as low as an 8 seed. They destroyed Illinois. I mean, I watched that entire game. Illinois, forget the seed or how hot Illinois was down the stretch. Illinois just got punched in the face time after time after time. Where does Loyola Chicago fit into the picture for you when you start ranking these teams right now of the 16, when you say, well, who's the best, who's second, who has a chance here to cut down the nets?
Well, you shouldn't listen to me, because my Elite Eight was Illinois, San Diego State. So I clearly, my Midwest credibility, Adam, is certainly flailing.
Hey, I thought if Georgia Tech had the ACC Player of the Year, I thought Georgia Tech would have had a shot to beat Loyola Chicago. So I'm with you here.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no doubt. Loyola Chicago, to me, was the most curious of the seeding. When you just look again, they did play some out of conference, but who in their right mind would play Loyola Chicago? Like, right. I mean, they stomped on Illinois, took their lunch money, and left them bloodied in the schoolyard. I mean, Illinois didn't have a chance. Brad Underwood looked hopeless and helpless on the sideline in that game. There was no adjusting them. Loyola had that game on a yo-yo the entire time, and whatever athletic advantages Illinois had, and clearly with Kofi Coburn, you're going to have some athletic advantages, and Ayo DeSumo. Loyola completely negated them with their defense in their scheme. And when you talk to coaches about Loyola, Adam, they speak about Porter Moser and their ball screen coverages like with a reverence. Like, I really feel like he's like a Brad Stevens 2.0 emerging in front of our eyes here. Like, he is a step ahead on that defensive end of the floor. And then obviously they have excellent players. I mean, they're top 10 in Ken Pom. They have number one defense in the country, and like none of it is an accident. It's a connected together program that I think is going to come out of the Midwest and play in the Final Four.
That's the expectation. I'm with you. Now, listen, Syracuse is in the Sweet 16. My alma mater, your alma mater. We graduated together. We've been, very close friends for a long time. Your first job in 1999 at the Syracuse Post-Standard. My first job at WHEN Radio in 1999. Buddy Boeheim was born in 1999. I mean, I had Buddy on the show yesterday. First time I've talked to him, it was remarkable. This after having Jim, of course, on Monday. I mean, you can wager a guess which one had the greater personality. Look, I mean, this is surreal on so many levels, including Pete. There was not a moment, and Jim and Buddy backed this up. I mean, there was not a moment all season long this run was predictable for Syracuse.
I mean, there wasn't. They've been a 500 team in the ACC the past 6 seasons. I think it's something like they're 4 or 5 games above 500 in league play. But look, it's the magic of that zone, and I really think Adam and I talked to some coaches about this week. Like, it's a momentum program, and as much as the zone is a great strategy, the real power of the zone is the energy. The way they came out against West Virginia in those first 8 minutes with energy, and then all of a sudden it becomes mental. Oh, the zone. I mean, West Virginia was getting the ball to the high post, but they didn't quite have the skill to do with it. And then you miss a few shots, and then it gets in your head. Like the zone has an aura about it right now. When they play it at a high level, when they're really locked in, and that program can be a little laissez-faire sometimes, and maybe not the most locked in of programs. But when it's all clicking and going, and give Jim credit, he found an identity and he's recruited to it. I mean, when you look out and see some of those wing athletes, you can see Hakeem Warwick and you can see Demetrius Nichols. You can see the archetypes and paradigms, and they have a very specific player and athlete who fits and thrives in that system. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a top 15 recruit. But if you are long and you are skilled, you will fit in the back of that zone, and that zone can take on a life of its own. Look at Kelvin Sampson, and I'm going to talk to him about this today. Do you remember that Oklahoma team, Adam, in 2003 that Syracuse played in Albany in the Elite Eight to go to the Final Four?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It was one of the best college basketball teams that season. Hollis Price and Quantas White were the best backcourt in college basketball. I don't remember off the top of my head if they were a 1 seed. If they weren't a 1, they were a 2. I think they were a 1. They got swallowed alive.
Oh, yeah.
By that zone on a back-to-back. I mean, it was, if you think about the all-time, the zone's a knuckleball in some ways. And when it's going, people have no chance. And that was like a Tim Wakefield no-hitter for Syracuse that day. That wasn't the most skilled Oklahoma team maybe in the world in terms of front court stuff, and they had no chance. That was a 20-point game, if memory serves me right. And it just spoke to how that zone can rattle you and how it can just completely emasculate a very, very good basketball team.
Pete, you have an incredible read right now on Yahoo Sports about Mark Emmert's defining moments on his level of incompetence. And, there are many moments in terms of his level of incompetence, in my opinion, but I read this thing twice. It's an amazing read. Take me and take our listeners through this.
Well, I mean, Mark Emmert for years, Adam, has been sort of a dundering and persistently incompetent leader. I mean, if you went and pulled 100 athletic directors right now in college athletics, I would imagine Mark Emmert's approval rating is less than 15%. I mean, he's a guy who just completely makes mistake after mistake, but the problem with the way college athletics are set up is that the presidents run it. So, and look, college presidents have other things to do than worry about what's actually happening in college athletics, right? They have campuses, they have enrollment, they have, their own endowments to pad. And so Mark Emmert has sort of existed in this netherworld. And look, obviously the equity issues that came up with the women's tournament this week was completely mishandled by the NCAA in every way, shape, and form. And so I was calling around about Emmert this week, and what I didn't realize maybe in real time that has come into quick focus here is that when they extended the NCAA tournament television deal in 2016, they extended it with 8 years left. So that means it would have come up in 2024, which means right now they would have been starting to go to market and put it out. And it was a big headline at the time. It's going to average over $1 billion a year, which obviously is a big number. Well, what they did by extending that deal in 2016 was, and by not taking it to market, that is now going to end up costing them billions and billions of dollars. They just got a grossly undervalued deal. If you look at the NFL deal, which I'm sure you've talked about plenty on your show, they had a huge number and it basically doubled. The NHL deal that is in the midst of happening right now has already essentially doubled, I've been told, and it's only half the rights have been sold. And so what the NCAA did was they basically got incremental 2.5% increases per year out. And so it's, somewhere in the neighborhood of 35-40% increase. So they just basically left billions on the table. And you know who this is going to hurt, Adam? It's not going to hurt Alabama. It's not going to hurt USC. They have all these other revenue streams. The money, the billions that they left on the table is going to hurt the Atlantic 10 and the Missouri Valley and the Mountain West and those types of leagues. You can go down the America East and the NEC. I mean, literally there are leagues and athletic departments that subside solely on NCAA tournament units. And those units are now going to be worth exponentially less than they could have been if they had just played this right. TV deals define what you do as a leader in college athletics, fair or not, and this will be remembered as an epic failure.
Pete, you're the best. This is an unbelievable read. We're going to encourage everyone to check it out on Yahoo Sports. Always appreciate the time. Enjoy Indy, my friend, and keep up the amazing work, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Hey, thanks for having me, Adam. Always a blast, bud.